And having done Suits for 7 years, I remembered what goes into a production. I also recognize how much people want content in different sizes. So part of what we're testing out now is it's amazing to be able to sit and watch a show for 30 minutes, but how can I give you a recipe in 2 minutes? And where can I share that with you? And how that continues to grow as ever. So exploring all the options of what it could look like.
She was paid to vanish, hidden away, silenced. But now she's exposing everything with DNA proof that will end Harry and Meghan's lies forever. The royal family tried to bury this. The contracts, the medical records, the shocking truth about who really gave birth to Archie and Lilibet. This woman was there. She carried them. And what she reveals next will make your jaw drop.
The whole point of a risk management board, which, as I said, everybody else gets, but I haven't, never been given since back end of 2019 was the last one that I was given. The whole point of that is to have a board and a risk assessment, a separate board from RABEC, that considers all of the facts and all the circumstances.
The palace is in panic mode. Meghan's worst nightmare is happening right now. You won't believe what comes next. For months, speculation had been building quietly in corners of social media and alternative news outlets. Questions about the nature of Meghan's pregnancies had circulated among certain groups, dismissed by mainstream outlets as conspiracy theories with no basis in reality. But as those questions persisted, something shifted. The speculation began to break through into wider conversation. Publications that had previously ignored these claims started to acknowledge them, not necessarily to validate them, but to address the fact that they existed at all and were gaining traction. The hospital video seemed designed as a response, a direct answer to those who doubted. Look, it seemed to say, here is proof, here is reality, here is what you asked to see. But in the world of public perception, timing matters as much as content. When evidence appears after doubt has already taken root, it can have the opposite effect. Rather than silencing questions, it can amplify them. People start asking not just what they are seeing, but why they are seeing it now, and why in this particular way. The core of the speculation centered on something called a moon bump, a prosthetic device designed to simulate pregnancy. These products exist legitimately. They are used in film and television production, in medical training, and by individuals for various personal reasons. The technology has become sophisticated over the years. Modern prosthetics can move, can appear remarkably realistic under clothing, and can be customized to match different stages of pregnancy. Their existence is not controversial. Their alleged use in this particular context is what created the firestorm. Those raising questions pointed to various public appearances, moments where the shape or position of the pregnancy seemed inconsistent with typical biological progression, instances where fabric appeared to crease in unusual ways, times when the size seemed to fluctuate between events that occurred close together in time. Photography analysis became a cottage industry among skeptics, with frame-by-frame examinations of red carpet appearances, charity events, and casual photographs. Defenders of Meghan argued that pregnancy varies greatly between individuals and even between different pregnancies in the same person. They pointed out that clothing choices, camera angles, posture, and lighting can all dramatically affect how a pregnancy appears in photographs. Medical professionals weighed in to explain that there is no single correct way for a pregnancy to look at any given stage. Bodies are different. Pregnancies are different. What seems unusual to an untrained observer might be completely normal to someone with actual medical expertise, but the questions persisted, and they carried significant weight for a specific reason. This was not just about celebrity gossip or personal choices. This involved the British royal line of succession. Prince Archie and Princess Lilibet hold positions in that line based on the understanding that they are the biological children of Prince Harry and Meghan Markle. If that understanding were false, if the children were born through surrogacy without proper disclosure, it would raise complex legal and constitutional questions about their status. The British monarchy operates under established protocols and historical precedents. Royal births are documented carefully, not out of nosiness, but because lineage and legitimacy matter in a hereditary system. For centuries, there have been procedures in place to remove doubt. Witnesses, announcements, medical confirmations, all designed to establish clear records. When those procedures are modified or bypassed, it creates space for uncertainty regardless of the actual truth. According to reports from various sources, some members of the public and even some royal observers found the circumstances surrounding both births unusual. There were no doctors appearing publicly to confirm the births in the traditional manner. There were no immediate photographs following the hospital departure. The announcements were brief and provided minimal detail. At the time, these choices were explained as a desire for privacy, a departure from the more public approach taken by other senior royals, but not necessarily suspicious in itself. Privacy is a reasonable request, particularly given the intense media scrutiny Meghan and Harry had faced throughout their relationship and marriage. The couple had been open about their struggles with press intrusion and their desire to protect their family from excessive public attention. Choosing a more private approach to announcing their children's births fit within that stated philosophy. However, privacy and protocol are not mutually exclusive. It is possible to maintain personal boundaries while still following established procedures that serve a specific institutional purpose. The speculation might have remained contained to fringe corners of the internet if not for one factor. A name began to appear in these discussions. Not a full name, just two initials. DL. At first, it seemed like another anonymous source, another unverifiable claim in an ocean of unverifiable claims. But as time went on, these initials appeared with increasing frequency and with increasingly specific allegations attached to them. According to the claims being made, DL was not a distant observer. She was not someone analysing photographs or raising questions from the outside. She allegedly claimed to have been directly involved in the most intimate way possible. The allegation was that DL had been the gestational carrier for both Archie and Lilibet, that she had been the one who physically carried the pregnancies from beginning to end while someone else presented the public face of motherhood. If true, such an arrangement would not be illegal. Surrogacy exists as a legitimate option for individuals and couples unable to carry pregnancies themselves. In many jurisdictions, including parts of the United States, compensated surrogacy is legal and regulated. The issue would not be the use of surrogacy itself, but rather the alleged lack of disclosure and the presentation of the pregnancies as traditional biological pregnancies carried by Meghan. The existence of DL, or someone making these claims under those initials, introduced a new dimension to the conversation. This was no longer just about analysing photographs or questioning inconsistencies. This was someone alleging direct personal involvement. Someone claiming to have lived inside the story everyone else was debating from the outside. But claims alone prove nothing. Anyone can make allegations about anyone, particularly about public figures who live much of their lives in view of cameras and commentary. The question that mattered was whether these claims could be substantiated, whether there was anything beyond words to support what was being said. And according to the person behind the initials, DL, there was much more than words. There were documents, records, and a willingness to subject those materials and herself to legal scrutiny. This is where the nature of the story began to shift from speculation into something with potentially different implications. Because if someone is willing to go on record, to provide documentation, to submit to verification processes, the conversation moves from the realm of internet rumor into the realm of claims that might be tested, proven, or disproven through established channels. The door opens to actual investigation rather than endless circular debate based on photograph analysis and conflicting interpretations. The question hanging over everything was why. If the allegations had any basis in reality, why would such an arrangement exist in the first place? And why would it be concealed so thoroughly? The answers to those questions, if they existed at all, would reveal much more than just the facts of how two children entered the world. They would reveal something about image, control, and the lengths to which people might go to maintain a particular narrative when the stakes feel impossibly high. The woman who goes by the initials DL describes a life that most people will never experience and would never choose. According to her account, she was not part of the story by accident. She was recruited deliberately through channels that exist far from public awareness. The arrangement, as she tells it, was presented to her with complete clarity from the very beginning. There would be no confusion about what was expected, no ambiguity about what would happen after the children were born. Everything was laid out in explicit terms. DL claims she was contacted through a specialized agency, one that operates with extreme discretion. These agencies exist in the surrogacy world, though their operations vary widely depending on jurisdiction, clientele, and the level of privacy required. Some work openly, matching intended parents with surrogates through transparent processes that include counseling, legal representation for both parties, and clear contractual frameworks. Others operate more quietly, serving clients who require additional layers of confidentiality for various reasons, ranging from personal preference to public visibility. According to DL, the agency that approached her fell into the latter category. The initial contact was professional but guarded. She was told that a high-profile couple required a gestational carrier and that the level of discretion needed exceeded what typical arrangements involved. She would not simply be asked to maintain privacy about the identity of the intended parents, which is common in many surrogacy arrangements. She would be asked to disappear from the narrative entirely, as if she had never existed at all. The compensation offered was described as substantial, though DL has not specified exact figures publicly. In high-end surrogacy arrangements, particularly those involving celebrities or extremely wealthy individuals, compensation can reach well into six figures or beyond. The money is meant to cover not just the physical act of carrying a pregnancy, but the disruption to the carrier's life, the health risks involved, the emotional labor, and in cases requiring exceptional secrecy, the long-term commitment to silence. DL claims she understood what she was agreeing to before signing anything. She was not coerced, according to her account. She was not deceived. About the terms, she made a calculated decision that the compensation and the opportunity outweighed the costs, including the cost of becoming invisible. For someone in certain financial circumstances, that calculation might make sense even with full awareness of what would be required. The decision to proceed does not mean the experience that followed was easy or that the long-term consequences were fully anticipated. Once the agreements were signed, DL says her life changed immediately. She was relocated away from her previous residence. Her movements became monitored and restricted. Contact with people from her previous life was severed. No phone calls that might create records. No visits that might leave traces. No freedom to come and go as she pleased. Her world contracted to a small number of locations and an even smaller number of people who were cleared to interact with her. She describes a routine that was rigid and unchanging. Medical appointments happened on schedule at facilities that she suggests were chosen for their discretion rather than their proximity or convenience. She was attended by healthcare providers who, according to her account, were fully aware of the unusual nature of the arrangement and were compensated accordingly for their silence. Between medical visits, her time was her own only in the most technical sense. She could read, watch television, rest, but she could not leave. She could not connect with the outside world. She could not do anything that might create a trail leading back to her existence. DL is careful to note that she was not physically mistreated. She was not denied medical care or subjected to conditions that endangered her health or the health of the pregnancies. The control, she explains, was not about cruelty. It was about ensuring that nothing and no one could compromise the arrangement. Every restriction had a purpose. Every limitation served the goal of maintaining complete separation between the biological reality of the pregnancies and the public presentation of them. Living in that kind of isolation takes a psychological toll that is difficult to convey to people who have not experienced it. Human beings are social creatures. We are built for connection, for interaction, for the small daily exchanges that remind us we exist in the eyes of others. When that is removed, when a person becomes invisible, not just to the public but to nearly everyone, the sense of self can begin to erode. Time moves differently. Days blur together. The world continues outside, while inside a bubble of secrecy, everything stands still. According to DL, she carried both pregnancies under these conditions. Months of isolation, repeated twice. The physical experience of pregnancy, which typically comes with social acknowledgement, celebration, and connection, happened entirely in shadow. While she says she felt the movements, experienced the changes in her body, attended the ultrasounds, and prepared for the births, someone else was receiving congratulations, appearing at events with a visible pregnancy, and building the public narrative of impending motherhood. This is where her account becomes particularly striking in its description of the emotional complexity involved. DL claims she understood intellectually that she was not the mother in any social or legal sense. The children would not be hers. She would not raise them, name them, or have any role in their lives. That was the agreement. That was what she had consented to. But understanding something intellectually and experiencing it emotionally are not the same thing. Carrying a pregnancy creates physical bonds, hormonal changes, and connections that exist regardless of the legal or social framework surrounding them. She describes watching from isolation as the public story unfolded, seeing news coverage of appearances and events, observing the narrative being constructed while living the biological reality that underpinned it. One woman carried the physical burden and risk. Another woman carried the social recognition and the identity of motherhood. Both roles existed simultaneously, but only one was visible. Only one was acknowledged. Only one would be remembered. The agreements DL claims to have signed were extensive and detailed. They covered not just the pregnancy and birth, but everything that came after. She would receive her compensation in structured payments designed to ensure compliance with the confidentiality terms. She would have no legal rights to the children. She would make no attempt to contact them or the parents. She would not speak to the media, write about her experience, or identify herself publicly in connection with the arrangement. She would return to her previous life or build a new one, but in either case she would do so as if the pregnancies had never happened. For a period of years, according to her account, that is exactly what she did. She maintained her silence. She did not reach out to journalists or tabloids, despite what would have been significant financial incentive to do so. She did not post on social media or drop hints in public spaces. She honored the terms she had agreed to, even as those terms required her to erase a significant portion of her own lived experience from any record or acknowledgement. But DL now claims that maintaining that silence became increasingly difficult as time went on. Not because she wanted attention or recognition, she insists, but because the weight of erasure became heavier than she had anticipated. Living outside the record of your own life, being unable to acknowledge experiences that shaped you profoundly, creates a specific kind of burden. It is not just about keeping a secret, it is about pretending that a formative experience never occurred, that months of your life never happened, that something you did never existed. According to DL, what finally made silence impossible was not a desire for revenge or fame, but a belief that the truth had become necessary. She claims the public narrative had diverged so far from the reality she lived that allowing it to continue unchallenged felt like participating in something fundamentally dishonest. Whether that justification holds weight is a matter of perspective. Confidentiality agreements exist for reasons. Breaking them has consequences. But DL suggests she reached a point where those consequences seemed less significant than continuing to carry the weight of enforced invisibility. The decision to come forward, if that is indeed what happened, would not have been simple or impulsive. Breaking a confidentiality agreement of this magnitude would expose someone to serious legal liability. Lawsuits, financial penalties, potential criminal charges depending on the jurisdiction and the specific terms violated. Coming forward would mean trading one kind of difficulty for another, potentially worse set of problems. It would mean inviting scrutiny, doubt, and attacks on credibility. It would mean becoming visible in the most uncomfortable way possible. Yet according to the claims now circulating, DL determined that remaining silent was no longer sustainable. The question that emerges from her account is not just whether what she describes actually happened, but what drives someone to accept erasure in the first place, and what eventually makes that erasure unbearable. The answer to those questions reveals something about the nature of secrecy, the price of invisibility, and the human need to be acknowledged as having existed and mattered, even in roles the world was never meant to know about. Claims without evidence remain just that, claims. Anyone can tell a story, particularly about people who live in the public eye and generate endless fascination and speculation. The internet is filled with allegations about celebrities, royals, and public figures, most of which evaporate under even minimal scrutiny. What separates a credible allegation from mere gossip or fabrication is the willingness and ability to provide supporting material that can be examined, challenged, and potentially verified through independent means. According to the information now emerging, DL is not simply telling a story and asking people to believe it based on her word alone. She claims to possess extensive documentation related to the alleged surrogacy arrangements. These documents, if they exist and contain what she says they contain, would transform the nature of this entire conversation. Written contracts, medical records showing pregnancy progression, ultrasound images, and healthcare provider notes, financial records documenting payments received, correspondence with legal representatives who facilitated the arrangements, communication with the agency that allegedly recruited her, and managed the logistics of her isolation and eventual disappearance from the narrative. If such documentation exists and can be authenticated, it would provide a foundation for examination that goes far beyond interpretation of photographs or analysis of public appearances. Documents can be forensically examined. Signatures can be verified. Medical records can be compared against timelines. Financial transactions leave trails that can be traced. None of this proves anything on its own, but it creates the possibility of actual investigation rather than endless speculation based on subjective interpretation of ambiguous evidence. Has also reportedly retained legal counsel, which adds another dimension to her claims. Lawyers who take on cases like this, particularly against high-profile individuals with substantial resources, typically do some level of vetting before agreeing to representation. They examine the evidence their client claims to possess. They assess the legal viability of the claims. They consider the likelihood of success and the potential consequences of failure. The involvement of legal representation does not prove the claims are true, but it suggests someone with professional stakes in the outcome has determined there is enough substance to proceed. More significantly, DL has allegedly agreed to submit to DNA testing under formal legal protocols. This is not a private test conducted at home with results that cannot be verified. This would involve chain of custody procedures, independent laboratories, and results that could be examined by experts on all sides. If DL is indeed the biological mother of the children in question, DNA testing would establish that fact definitively. If she is not, testing would expose her claims as false with equal certainty. The willingness to undergo DNA testing changes the calculation considerably. It is one thing to make claims knowing they cannot easily be proven or disproven. It is quite another to make claims while simultaneously offering to submit to a test that would conclusively resolve the central factual question. Of course, the test would need to actually happen, with proper protocols and participation from all relevant parties for it to serve that purpose. Offering to take a test is not the same as actually taking one under conditions that produce legally meaningful results. While DL describes a life of isolation and enforced invisibility, the public was seeing something entirely different. Meghan Markle appeared at events throughout both pregnancies, photographed extensively, interviewed on occasion, presenting what appeared to be a straightforward pregnancy experience. There were royal engagements, charity appearances, carefully orchestrated photo opportunities, all showing a visibly pregnant woman navigating public life with apparent ease and grace. According to DL's account, both of these realities existed simultaneously. She was experiencing the biological reality of pregnancy in complete isolation, while another woman was experiencing the social reality of pregnancy in full public view. One carried the physical burden, the medical, appointments, the bodily changes, and the eventual delivery. The other carried the public acknowledgement, the congratulations, the attention, and the identity of the expectant and then new mother. If this account has any basis in truth, the arrangement would represent an unusual division of experience. Pregnancy typically involves both dimensions, the physical and the social, experienced by the same person. Friends and family acknowledge the pregnancy. Strangers offer congratulations. The pregnant person navigates the world in a body that announces its condition. They receive advice, attention, and the countless small interactions that accompany visible pregnancy. That entire social dimension would have been absent from DL's experience and present in someone else's. Describes the imbalance not as an oversight, but as the entire point. The arrangement was never designed to be fair in any traditional sense. It was designed to produce a specific outcome. 2 children would be born. 1 couple would become parents. The public would believe the pregnancy had unfolded in a particular way, and 1 woman would disappear as if her role had never existed. Fairness was not part of the equation. Function was all that mattered. For a period of time, according to this version of events, the arrangement achieved its goals. The children arrived. The public story remained intact. no one questioned the narrative in any way that gained mainstream traction. The image held. The structure remained invisible. DL maintained her mandated silence, while the public narrative continued uninterrupted. But arrangements built on silence carry inherent vulnerability. They depend on every participant continuing to honor agreements, even as circumstances change, even as the emotional weight of those agreements becomes heavier, even as the initial reasons for silence may feel less compelling over time. Silence cannot be enforced indefinitely through contracts alone. It requires ongoing willingness from everyone involved. When that willingness erodes in even one person, the entire structure becomes unstable. According to DL, questions about the pregnancies did not begin with her decision to come forward. She claims that questions surfaced earlier, behind closed doors, within circles that had access to information not available to the general public. Royal households, like all large institutions, have staff, advisors, and various individuals who see and hear things that never reach public awareness. When something unusual occurs, when standard protocols are bypassed, when typical procedures are modified or eliminated, people notice even if they do not speak about it openly. DL alleges that when questions did arise internally, they were not welcomed. They were not investigated or addressed through the channels that typically exist for resolving doubts or clarifying confusion. Instead, according to her account, they were discouraged. People who raised concerns were told the matter was private. Curiosity was treated as inappropriate rather than reasonable. The message, subtle or direct, was that questions were not to be pursued. This response, if it occurred as described, would represent a particular approach to managing doubt. Rather than resolving questions by providing information that could settle them, the strategy would have been to suppress the questions themselves, to make asking uncomfortable or professionally risky, to establish that certain topics were off-limits, regardless of the reasons someone might have for wanting clarity. Institutions often handle sensitive matters this way, not necessarily because they have something to hide, but because they believe privacy or discretion serves a greater good. Royal families in particular have long operated with the understanding that not everything needs to be public, that some matters are legitimately private even when curiosity about them is high. The boundary between appropriate privacy and inappropriate secrecy is not always clear, and different people will draw that line in different places based on their values and priorities. But when institutions built around tradition and procedure allow those traditions and procedures to be bypassed without explanation, it creates a particular kind of vacuum. Procedures exist for a reason. Royal birth protocols developed over centuries serve to establish legitimacy and remove doubt. When those protocols are set aside, even for seemingly good reasons like personal privacy, the absence creates space for questions that might not otherwise arise. For months or even years, those questions may remain contained. The image projected to the public may be strong enough to override any doubts that exist in smaller circles, but questions that are suppressed rather than answered do not disappear. They persist. They circulate quietly. They wait for an opportunity to break into wider awareness. According to DL's account, that opportunity eventually arrived not because of external investigation or journalistic exposure, but because someone who had been silent decided silence was no longer acceptable. The woman who had supposedly agreed to disappear decided that disappearance came at too high a cost. The person who was never meant to exist in the story decided that her existence mattered after all. Whether that decision came from conscience, from personal need, from financial motivation, or from some combination of factors, it represented a crack in a structure that depended on absolute integrity. And once a crack appears in a story that requires perfection to survive, everything changes. The question is no longer whether the story is true. The question becomes why it required such extraordinary measures to protect it in the first place, and what those measures were protecting it from. Stories can hold together despite small inconsistencies. People understand that photographs can be misleading, that lighting and angles change appearance, that clothing choices affect how bodies look in public settings. Most people approach images of celebrities and public figures with a basic assumption of good faith. What you see is generally what is actually happening. Variations in appearance get attributed to normal factors rather than deliberate manipulation. But when variations accumulate, when they begin to form patterns rather than isolated oddities, attention shifts from casual observation to active scrutiny. Over the course of both pregnancies, certain observers began noting moments that struck them as unusual. These were not dramatic revelations or obvious proof of anything. They were small details that registered as slightly off. In one appearance, the pregnancy appeared quite large and prominent. In another event shortly afterward, it seemed smaller or positioned differently. Fabric that should have draped smoothly over a rounded surface instead created sharp creases or unnatural folds. The silhouette seemed to change not just in size, which would be expected over time, but in shape and proportion between appearances that occurred within days of each other. Individually, any one of these observations could be dismissed easily. Pregnancy does change from day to day. Posture affects how a pregnant belly appears. Different clothing fits differently and creates different visual effects. The position of a baby shifts throughout pregnancy. All of these explanations are medically accurate and account for variation that skeptics might find suspicious. But the observers raising questions were not pointing to single images. They were identifying patterns across multiple events, multiple angles, multiple time periods. Some focused on what appeared to be unusual creasing, straight lines appearing across the curved surface of the pregnancy bump where medical understanding would suggest smooth, organic curves. Others noted what seemed like inconsistent size relative to stated dates, pregnancies that appeared further along than they should have been at certain points and less advanced than expected at others. Still others pointed to moments captured on video where movement seemed to produce effects that did not match typical pregnancy movement, shifts that appeared more mechanical than biological. The analysis became increasingly detailed as more people joined the examination. Screenshots were compared side by side. Timelines were constructed matching public appearances to announced pregnancy stages. Enhancement techniques were applied to images to examine details not clearly visible in original photographs. This kind of crowdsourced investigation has become common in the internet age. Large groups of people with varying levels of expertise examine available evidence and share their observations, building collective analysis that can sometimes identify things professional investigators might miss. According to the claims now being made, these observations were not the result of photographic artifacts or misunderstanding of pregnancy variation. DL alleges that what people were noticing were signs of something deliberately constructed. She claims that prosthetic pregnancy devices were used to maintain consistent public appearance across multiple events and time periods. These devices, commonly known as moon bumps in the pregnancy simulation industry, are designed to create realistic appearances of pregnancy for legitimate purposes, including film production, education, and medical training. The technology behind these devices has advanced considerably over recent years. Early prosthetics were obvious and unconvincing, suitable only for distant shots or brief appearances. Modern versions incorporate materials that move somewhat naturally, that can be customized to match skin tone and body type, and that hold up under closer examination than previous generations. They come in various sizes corresponding to different pregnancy stages, allowing someone to present a consistent progression over time. If such devices were used as alleged, the goal, according to DL, was not deception for its own sake, but consistency for credibility. She claims each public appearance was carefully planned, each prosthetic chosen to match the appropriate stage, each angle and position considered to maintain the illusion. The point was not to fool people with a single perfect performance, but to create a seamless narrative across many appearances that would not invite the kind of detailed examination that inconsistency provokes. Consistency only works, however, when nothing disrupts it, when every appearance goes according to plan, when no unexpected movements or angles reveal what is meant to remain hidden. The illusion can hold indefinitely. But public appearances involve variables that cannot always be controlled. Wind catches fabric in unexpected ways. Cameras capture angles that were not anticipated. Spontaneous movements happen that were not rehearsed. According to this account, small disruptions accumulated over time, creating the visual inconsistencies that eventually drew attention. Then came the video, and with it, a shift in the entire dynamic. The hospital footage appeared showing Meghan visibly pregnant, moving around a room with music playing, apparently near the time of delivery. The visual message was clear and direct. This is happening. This is real. The pregnancy is not theoretical or hidden. It is right here in front of you. Nothing is being concealed. Nothing is artificial. What you are seeing is authentic biological pregnancy captured in a private moment. But the video did not have the effect that may have been intended. Rather than settling questions, it intensified them. The timing was significant. The footage did not emerge during the pregnancy when such documentation might have felt natural. It appeared later after speculation had already begun circulating in various online communities and alternative media outlets. In public relations and crisis management, timing matters enormously. Evidence presented before doubt takes hold can establish credibility. Evidence presented after doubt has formed tends to invite additional scrutiny rather than providing reassurance. Many viewers found the video felt staged rather than spontaneous. The camera work, the framing, the choice of what to show and what to exclude all suggested deliberate construction rather than casual documentation. The setting appeared controlled. The movements seemed performed rather than natural. The entire presentation carried a quality that struck observers as more demonstration than documentation. It felt like proof being offered rather than reality being lived. This distinction might seem subtle, but it matters considerably in how people process information. When something appears authentic without trying to prove its authenticity, it tends to be accepted at face value. When something appears designed to prove authenticity, it triggers examination of why such proof was deemed necessary. The video shifted the question from whether the pregnancy was real to why visual evidence of its reality suddenly needed to be provided. From that point forward, the conversation changed shape. It was no longer primarily about whether people should believe the story as presented. It became about why the story seemed to require active reinforcement. Why documentary evidence appeared after questions arose rather than naturally alongside the events themselves. Why something that should have been self-evident needed to be demonstrated. Once that shift occurs, once the audience moves from passive acceptance to active questioning of motivation and presentation, regaining control of the narrative becomes exponentially more difficult. The video that was meant to close the conversation instead opened a new phase of it. Skeptics felt their suspicions confirmed. Supporters felt the need to provide such evidence proved nothing and reflected only the unreasonable demands of conspiracy theorists. The divide widened, the debate intensified. And according to DL's claims, all of this was happening while she watched from outside the public eye, knowing what she says she knows about how both children actually entered the world, bound by agreements that required her silence until those agreements no longer felt sustainable. What began as whispers in fringe corners of the internet had evolved into something larger, something that traditional media could no longer entirely ignore, even if they remained skeptical of the underlying claims. The image that once seemed unshakable had developed cracks that widened each time new attention focused on them. And the question that remained was not whether the story would survive, but whether the truth, whatever that truth actually was, would eventually emerge through the fractures that doubt had created.